Well, good afternoon, PAB Board and our visitors and guests today. We welcome you to this, our meeting here on November the 18th, here at the Towson Courthouse, Historic Courthouse. We're going to call this meeting to order. First thing I'd like to do is take the roll. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bishop Ralph Dennis. I'm the chair of the PAB. All right. District 1.
Hey, it's Pete Fitzpatrick for District 1.
Thank you, Peter. District 2.
This is Karen Williams.
Hey, Karen.
Hi.
District 3. District 4 is vacant. District 5.
Renee Stratt.
Renee. Hey,
Present.
Renee. District 6.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Richmond.
Hey, Scott. Thank you for coming. District 7.
Dawn DeShawn Fewer.
Dawn. Alrighty. And District at large. We got Nigeria.
Good afternoon, Nigeria Rolling Forward.
Thank you, Nigeria. And the other at-large member.
Good afternoon, Kara White.
Kara. Thank you, Kara. Thank you so very much. Welcome all of you to our meeting today on November the 18th. We have distributed the minutes from our last meeting. I hope you had a chance to review them. If there's any questions, concerns, additions, deletions, let us know. And if there are not, I'll take a motion to accept these minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you, Renee. Can I get a second? Properly moved in second that we accept the minutes from our last meeting from September the 16th. So be it. Any opposed? All who agree?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Today, we're happy to have with us some guests from the county, and we're extremely happy to hear what they might want to share with us today. Our first remarks today will be coming from Dr. Anita Tolson, and who is the president of the Baltimore County NAACP, along with the first vice president, Mr. Roland Patterson from the Baltimore County NAACP. Welcome to the PAB. I think it's your first time here, right?
It is.
Fantastic. Well, we welcome you. Take a few minutes and share with us whatever's in your heart that you think might be relative to what you do and what we do. All right.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting us to the meeting. I am a part of the police, task force. It's another policing accountability. So this is definitely, I definitely appreciate you inviting us for this one. I'm sure it will go hand in hand with the other board or accountability board that I'm on. I'm looking forward to learning things and making the community better. Of course, we're with equity and promotion with minorities and just making sure everything is fair across the board and justice.
Fantastic.
Yes, so
Fantastic.
thank you for that. And my name is Danita.
It's Danita.
Danita.
Okay, my fault there.
No problem.
Thank you so much for changing it. All righty. Mr. Patterson. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was my pleasure to shake your hand earlier, and I want to say good morning to all of the commission members or board members who are present both in person and by way of technology. Can everyone hear me virtually? Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
All right. So what I'd like to do, and I also want to thank Mr. Caligari for getting in touch with me for this purpose. I'd like to take, I was told I had 15 minutes. I want to talk about what we think you might consider going forward as a focus. By way of introduction, I'm a former prosecutor. I worked in Prince George's County, Maryland, as a prosecutor for 17 years. And for a period of time, I did prosecute police officers. So what we want to suggest, emphasis that you are the experts here. But what we want to suggest is that you will pay special attention to what is called escalating or escalatory conduct. Conduct that raises the pitch of a circumstance. You may come into into contact with cases that deal with just language. And you may say, oh, they were just having a bad day. But I want to go over 3 cases with you, and you will see that it is my point based on my career experience that escalating conduct results in greater misconduct. No one starts off with murder. They start off with assault. So no police officer starts off with physical assault. They start off with language. So let me give you three cases, and then I'm done. In 2023, during the term of the current police chief, a Afro-American teen went into the Woodlawn Library after he had been banned from coming in there. After what I'm going to tell you, I contacted the library seeking to find out why he was banned, and they would not tell me. The officer, they called the police because he was banned. He was technically trespassing, and the officers responded and physically assaulted the young man. There was no, there was no indication that he assaulted them or that he had been disobedient other than attempting to stay in the library. And so the question becomes the conduct that is escalating. It shouldn't be the police officer. So that's case 1. All right, case number 2. Later in the year, October 2023, a young man was arrested, apparently validly arrested. And he was taken to the Woodlawn police station. And he was housed temporarily in a holding cell. The young man was vehemently objecting to the arrest. He disputed the validity of the arrest. But he's in a holding cell. He is detained. He attempted to damage the camera that was in his cell. And so an officer came in and assaulted him. And he was in custody. Now, I'm urging that there should have been another charge level for damaging property, et cetera, but this man was in custody. He damaged property. He did not assault a police officer or place an officer in fear of being arrested. Now, this particular officer, whose name I do know, was previously found involved in a similar offense, beating a man in a holding cell. And so you see, this is why the legislature put this accountability law, which created your board, in place. You see, and I just think that it is acutely necessary that you are eyes peeled for any conduct that could lead to this kind of threats, epithets of any kind, et cetera, because my experience is that this is the conduct that follows. Now, before I get to my last case, look, I talked with the chief. He's a good man, but we have differences. And there's a great statement in the law. Here's a lawyer, and maybe another one in the room. Reasonable minds differ. And I think that you are here for a purpose. And so what I am saying is that the chief is of the position that these events that I'm talking about are 3 out of 30,000. That there have been 30,000 police stops in Baltimore County since he's been in office. And the number of violent or excessive force incidents is minuscule compared to the numbers that I raised. And I would flip the script for your perspective. I urge you not to have that perspective. Because I'm trying to really make my case. So let me step back to an example that you all know. If Mamie Till was in this room today, she wouldn't listen to statistics. You understand what I'm saying? If someone in your family experienced this kind of behavior, you wouldn't listen to statistics because there's been one too many. And that was the one in your household. And you understand that if there's been that one, there could be another. And we at the NAACP say the same thing. We say the same thing. Okay, finally, in a case that you may know about, Justin Russell was validly arrested, and he was taken into Baltimore City for treatment. He tried to escape, and in the course of his escape, there may have been physical contact that was justified between he and the police, and he was injured. So, upon the completion of his hospital treatment, Mr. Russell told the police that he had an asthmatic condition, and he did not want to be enclosed in a police car. He wanted them to roll the windows down. He was not disputing his arrest, not disputing his transportation. He was simply saying, he was essentially making an ADA claim. I need the windows rolled down, and then I'm fine. He didn't say take my handcuffs off, nothing. Just roll the windows down. The officers wouldn't do it. And so he began to beat his head on the window, disputing and objecting to what had occurred. He was enclosed in contradiction to his request. So the officer involved, he had long braids, pulled Mr. Russell out of the car by his braids, threw him to the ground, pepper sprayed him, and kicked him. And this is all on the same officer's body cam. Now, this officer, whose name I won't call for now, this officer was tried in Baltimore City. And for whatever reason, an 89-year-old retired judge from Baltimore County found his way onto the case. And he acquitted this officer of the conduct. And I'm going to ask the president whether I can write the state's attorney about that, because I just learned that in preparation for this meeting. But what I'm saying is that look, I was a prosecutor. I deal with the police every day. Good police officers, every day. I couldn't have earned my meal, right, without working with the police. So, but amongst, we didn't throw priests out because of the priest scandal, right? But there were a few bad priests that needed to be thrown out. And that's what I'm saying here. I'm not saying, I worked with the police. I'm not saying that all police are bad, but I am saying that where there are renegade police officers, they need to be rooted out and, if necessary, thrown out. Okay? Because birds of a feather, right? Where there's one, there might be two. And if there's 30,000 police officers on the force here, I don't know what the number is, but just take that and I'm done. Maybe there are only, out of 30,000, maybe there's only 100 that are renegade, meaning inclined to use violence, et cetera, misuse violence. But that 100 can wreak what kind of damage on our community? In closing, Bobby Kennedy said, any society is as good as the police department that it maintains. And so this is the mindset that I come to imbue, or at least propose to you. An acute mindset that is on guard for escalatory conduct and determined to send a message, let the word go forth, that the conduct that is permitted here is the conduct of protecting and serving this community. I'm sorry if I went too long. And I thank you very, very much for your time.
Well, you borrowed some of her time. She allocated part. So it's not a problem. Thank you. Thank you so very much for sharing with us today. We also like to welcome the president of the Randallstown NAACP, Mr. Ryan Coleman, today. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chair, thank you. All the PAB members on here and also online, and all the people in attendance here in the chamber. Appreciate you inviting me to come and speak. Certainly, I want to thank the PAB for the work that is done here. It's very important for the community, all people in the community. I think, it's interesting when you come down to the police, because I feel like, and I agree with a lot that Mr. Patterson said, but they want to put us in boxes where Black people can't like the police, or this person, can't do this. And we're not in boxes. I think when people are in trouble, they call the police and they want help, white, blue, green, or yellow. I think mostly the only thing we're saying is we just want to be treated fairly. That's it. Treated fairly. And I think that's the key here. We see that, to Mr. Patterson's point, we see individuals who continue to misbehave and before the PAB go through the process and have been charged, repeatedly charged, but they're still police officers. Okay, that was the case over at Hopkins that Mr. Patterson talked about. The chief has been very transparent with our branch, and I mean, I come in all the time and view the body worn cameras all the time. That has never happened before any other chief that we have dealt with. So the transparency is there. What I have tried to do as the president and also as a branch is to be at the table having those conversations with the police, to give them our point of view, where we're coming from, and to focus as well on diversity issues and bringing in more minorities into the police department, quite frankly, because if you don't care about minority that work with you or women that work with you, how can you police effectively? Okay, so we focused on that. Last week, I was just over talking to the recruitment section about the different things they're doing to bring in police. I mean, we have many vacancies. We want good police officers, whether they're yellow, pink, green, or whatever. And so we've tried to do that, and we will continue to do that. But the relationship between the police and our branch, talking to the different captains, talking to the different rank and file, has been very good under this chief. And just getting them to understand the perspective of where we're coming from. Because as a child, as a kid, as a teenager, riding down Ricestown Road, I used to get pulled over all the time. Okay? I just happened to have a Honda Accord, stolen car a lot, and I just happened to be Black a lot. And I was pulled over a lot back in the day. So much that I forget. But I was respectful, so I just kept on going. But the other thing that we've been trying to do with the police is things might be in policy, but they might not look good. We totally understand when you arrest somebody, it's not going to look pretty, period. It's not going to look period. But again, was there something else that could have been done? Did you need to hit them in the face 5 times? Or could you use your mace? Could you de-escalate it? And kind of looking at these things. And I think the PAB board, making sure that the small amount of officers are being held accountable, and also looking at policy sometimes, because sometimes the policy is okay. We had a young lady at Newtown that was leg swept because she was resisting arrest, and that was within policy, but it didn't look good. Didn't look good at all. And so we're definitely here to support the PAB. Anything that we can do. I will tell you, I mean, we have the best police department in the state. There ain't no question about that. No question about that. Are there things that can be done better? Absolutely. but I've seen the closure rate on these cases. Going back and finding these juveniles that are a real issue. I mean, they really are standing the last line of defense for our communities, and they're doing a really good job with it. But of course, we should strive for 100% with these cases, and we'll continue to work with the police department and also work with the PAB. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We certainly appreciate your commentary very much. Did you want to add anything or?
No, I think that it's fine for board members to ask questions and then public comment, members of the public can
Okay.
discuss.
Any questions from any board members? Any observations from what has been shared with us today? From those in the room, those look with us virtually? Anybody? Doesn't sound like there is.
Peter's gonna
Okay,
hand
yeah, Peter.
I just a thank you to all of our guests. The perspectives offered certainly give me a lot to think about. So I appreciate that and their time.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Just want to make sure we didn't miss anybody. Awesome. Again, we thank you, and we hope that you will be open to come back and share with us again as we do our best to create a plan here that is effective for everybody.
And we will have a public comment period at the end. So for anybody who's on remotely or in person, if you have questions or comments,
Okay,
that's just so we can kind of consolidate the questions to the end, and then there'd be questions of what comes after, as well as of our great presenters.
so you're asking them to just stay until the public comments come up?
If possible, unless you have to leave now, otherwise.
If you have to leave, or can you stay
I
around?
can stay.
Okay, because there's public comment, but that comes at the end. Okay. All right, with that, is the minister going to share today? Because, you know.
Yeah, he's here to answer any questions, but.
Okay, any comments you want to make here? You sure? All right, just want to make sure before we move on. Let's roll. There's a number of things that we're doing that may be interest not only to the public, but to the NAACP members who are here today. We're about at the end of the year, and we're developing our annual report. And today, one of the things we're going to do is take a look at that, polish that up a little bit, and get that ready for submission. Y'all know Henry Caligari. He's our manager here who helps us to pull all this together. Henry, I'll put it on you, buddy.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. No, I'm happy to. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen right now so that, wait a second, let me just make sure I get the most up-to-date version. And so if you see in front of you now, you should have a copy of the annual report draft. And I want to put a heavy emphasis on the word draft. It is not the final version. I'm going to pull it up on the screen for everybody here. And before anybody comments, I know that we have some work to do on the visuals, because on a few of these pages, some of the numbers are not coming through clearly when printed, especially, but even on the PDF version. So I'm going to be working on that. But I want to begin by thanking the members of the drafting committee, Chair Dennis, Don Sean Fuhrer, and Kara White for their work over the last few weeks and months in helping get this report to where it is today. And to make sure that, again, this is a final prepared document in December. And so if anybody has any comments or any suggested changes, please feel free to either in this meeting, or if you want to reach out to me directly via email, please do so, and we will discuss any proposed changes at the December meeting. That's the real focus of the end of the year meeting, is to make sure that this report is where it should be, where it needs to be, and that it reflects the desires of this board.
She wants a copy. Did she have?
Yes, of course. Yes, and if anybody wants a copy, we have extra copies here, and if we run out, we'll print out some more for you. And I want to emphasize that the Maryland Police Accountability Act and the corresponding county code sections delegate specific authority to the Police Accountability Board. And what I personally I think one of the most important responsibilities is this report.
Mhm.
The PAB does not directly handle cases of officer misconduct that falls on the Administrative Charging Committee and the trial boards, but it does have the ability to review those outcomes and to make recommendations to the county executive, to the county council, and to whomever this report is shared with to go on and to take action as a result. This is only the first full year also where the PAB can review data from the Administrative Charging Committee. The ACC began reviewing cases in July of 2023 for complaints filed or made after July 1st of 2023. So last year's report included essentially a very abbreviated number of cases as Internal Affairs began to receive complaints and began to investigate them and send them to the Administrative Charging Committee. Many of those take a lot of time. And so this year is the first year we have from January through December, a year's worth of cases that the Administrative Charging Committee has reviewed and issued opinions charging officers or not charging officers and recommending discipline in the ones where they do charge. So I just want to use that as a framework understanding this this draft. Again, I keep saying that because, again, this is not the final document and changes can be made. I want to, Bishop Dennis, if you don't mind, I'm not going to read the whole letter that you submitted, but I want, but it begins with a letter from Chairman Bishop Dennis, who's done a great job taking over in July from our former chair, Ms. Linda Shields, who did a fantastic job of guiding this board through its first, essentially 2 years of existence, from the fall of 2022 through July of this year. Turning to page 4, that is a description of the policy that currently exists. The virtual version, the PDF version that will be available online, has direct links to the Maryland Police Accountability Act, as well as the county council legislation that adopted it and put it into effect for Baltimore County. It goes over the membership requirements and the process as required by law. Going down to page 6 shows the roster of the PAB, the Administrative Charging Committee, and the Civilian Trial Board. Again, there is a vacancy in District 4. District 4 residents are welcome to apply to through the Baltimore County Boards and Commissions page to apply for that vacancy. We are still interviewing people. We've interviewed some members of the public. We will continue to do so until the selection is ultimately made. Civilian Trial Board roster is also included along with their profession. Again, trial board members serve on an as-needed basis, 1 member per trial board. So at this point, all of the civilian members have been selected for a trial board. Not all have yet served, just based on when those trial boards are happening. There are several which I'll touch on later after we discuss the report that are upcoming as well. Going down to, again, page 8 here, this is again, a list of all the meetings and links available to the PAB website and to YouTube where the recordings are posted. And there's also the link at the bottom to the website. So again, if you have a hard copy, you can put that into any web browser and it'll take you there. And all of the documents that are available here are also available on the website. On page 9, this is something the State Police and Correctional Training Commission put together on the police misconduct complaint process. I think this is incredibly useful as a way to understand how the process plays out and ultimately how it resolves. And it also cites to the public safety article, it's a PSA stands for, and that's where all of this is included underneath the state law and shows how a complaint ultimately goes to the Administrative Charging Committee after being reviewed and investigated by Internal Affairs, and they make a determination to charge or not charge, and how the officer, who if they have been charged, can either accept the discipline or can request a trial board, which will hear the matter essentially as an appeal, although it is handled on a de novo basis, which means it's treated as a new case. They treat it as they're not reviewing the ACC's decision, they're reviewing the investigation to make a decision. And that finally, an officer can appeal a trial board decision to the circuit court for judicial review. Going to page 10, and this is where I know visually we need to get better clarity on these images. For whatever reason, when it went to PDF form, the quality degraded. So we're going to go in there and fix this, because to me, this is one of the most important sections of the entire report, which is a review of the outcomes of the Administrative Charging Committee. And so we will take care of that and again, upload a version that is clearer. So to kind of give a look underneath the hood here, the Administrative Charging Committee reviews hundreds of cases a year. There are, broadly speaking, 3 categories of cases that are shown here. There are department car accidents. That's simply a case where a Baltimore County Police Department officer is involved in a crash with with another car, civilian car, member of the public's car, or property, or person, and the Departmental Accident Review Committee reviews the circumstances around it, and if it's deemed to be preventable and the officer at fault, is sent to the Administrative Charging Committee for review and to ultimately decide whether or not to charge the officer. As you can see, the green here on this second one is represents charged. Most of those cases, the officer is charged almost by their nature. If the review committee looks at it and says, there's an example of the officer failing to prevent the accident or causing the accident, then it will be sent to the ACC. And in those circumstances, the ACC, a majority of the time, does agree. They do disagree in certain circumstances where they do not believe, based on the evidence they've reviewed, that the officer was at fault. Then there are use of force cases. Use of force cases, the way they're categorized above in this section, is any opinion where use of force is part of the complaint. Now, I emphasize that, and it's also included in more detail in the paragraph below, because in some circumstances, and in fact, I would say probably most circumstances, if a member of the public complains about an officer violating the use of force policy, there's also often a complaint about something else included in there. So, for instance, rude and disorderly conduct. And a member of the public may state that a officer not only was not used unjustified force or unreasonable force, but was also rude and discourteous. In certain circumstances, the Administrative Charging Committee will maybe hypothetically not charge for the use of force, but may charge for rude and discourteous or a body-worn camera violation, some related but not precisely use of force. Those are included in this category. And then finally, the other category is other. And the reason why it's categorized that way is because there are a large variety of complaints that are filed by members of the public. And it is difficult to categorize those into subcategories without it becoming exhaustive. Now, later in this report, we've compiled the list of all the other complaints that have been filed. So that is included in here, that is there. So it's not just other, you're not going to see what's in there. It is included in there as well. And again, I know visually this needs to be clearer, but that's what the data will show. On the next page, there are the outcomes of cases. And this is as of the October ACC meeting. The November meeting happened on Friday. That data still needs to be, we're going to collect it and put it into this. The BC Stat team has been very helpful in helping us in terms of taking the data and making it visual instead of just a list of cases and outcomes. About 76% of cases as of October, the officers were not charged. About 24% the officers were charged. Going down into specific categories, you see that about 82% of officers who were alleged to have violated policy in a departmental car accident were charged. About 88% of officers who were, or rather 12% of officers who were accused of what falls into the other category were charged. And there is a separate breakdown for use of force. And I'm going to ask BC Stat to tweak the language here a little bit because it's not clear. But the chart on the left, the pie chart on the left here, this is just use of force itself. 2 officers charged, 45 officers not charged. Under use of force outcomes, there are additional officers who were charged in a use of force complaint, but not for use of force itself. And then that needs to be better spelled out here. But I'm going to work with BC Stat to make sure that that's clear. But I think it's worth showing that these are circumstances where an officer may not have been charged for use of force itself, but was charged with a policy violation of some sort that was alleged to have occurred. And then going down to the next page here, this is where there's opinions containing at least one allegation of the following. The light purple is where they are charged. The dark purple is not charged. There's departmental car accidents, rude and discourteous conduct, and use of force are the top three most commonly alleged, followed by racial discrimination, body-worn camera violation, and violating investigative procedures. And this chart shows that, for instance, with body-worn camera violation, there are a large number of officers who, if alleged to have violated that policy, the ACC agreed and ultimately charged them with that. And I know Don can probably speak to this better, but part of that is that that's often something where that is coming out of a investigation of something else. So internal affairs may flag that the officer's body-worn camera was not on or was deactivated prematurely. Remember, the public may not be able to determine that when they're filing their complaint. And then again, this continues to list all of the, including the one-offs. And again, I want to expand this out so that some of these where it cuts off can be, for instance, leaving duty assignment without permission as well. And then there's a similar breakdown that just isolates the other categories here. So these are the categories that don't fall into use of force, but don't fall into the other ones. So for instance, and you can see the comparison here. So body-worn camera, 14 officers were charged for body-worn camera violations under the other category. That number jumps to 15 because there's one use of force case where the officer did not have the body-worn camera on for the full period of time or deactivated it prematurely. So that shows up in that category as well. And again, this is not including the November data, which will be added to it. And I just have a couple other tweaks that I'm going to work with BC Stat on so we can make this clear to anybody who's looking at it without me being in the room and explaining what it's all about. The next page is trial board outcomes, where, again, without specifying who the officer is, the outcome of the trial board, whether or not the officer was charged or found guilty by the trial board or not, the dates. On page 15, this is the trends in discipline. This is one where the drafting committee elected to find that there's not enough data based on the fact that 2023 had a very limited number of cases to the administrative charging committee to compare trends. The 2023 data, several months, there were only a handful of cases because, again, it's 2023, they would have only heard cases, the ACC only heard cases that a complaint originated after July 1 of that year. And some of these cases take months to investigate, particularly the more detailed complaints. So therefore, a lot of the cases that were heard this year originated from complaints filed in 2023. And so it's kind of an apples to oranges to compare 23 and 24. But in future years, again, taking a 12-month sample size, it will be very, I wouldn't say easy, but it will be much more doable to compare, for instance, 2024's data, how many use of force cases, how many rude and discourteous, how many body worns with 2025. Going on to page 16, here are the policy recommendations. And again, this is something where any member of the board, for whatever reason, has any additions to this or any changes to this. We're not voting on this today. It'll be voted on and amended in December. But this is more to give a month of time to review and to reach different determinations or to make recommendations to the drafting committee. The policy recommendation is the first one, and I'll give a brief overview of what the policy is currently and why there is a recommendation to change it, is to toll the 1 year and 1 day deadline when there's a criminal investigation. Currently, if a complaint is filed against an officer, the administrative charging committee must issue an opinion within 1 year and 1 day of the complaint being filed. The problem is if the officer is simultaneously under criminal investigation, that creates evidentiary issues for what the administrative charging committee can review or will review. For instance, statements by the officer. The officer may not be interviewed, for instance, in the administrative case if they're also being investigated criminally. It is very rare that a criminal investigation of a law enforcement officer that may lead to a jury trial will be over within 1 year and a day of the complaint being filed. Last year, the Maryland General Assembly, the House and the Senate both introduced bills that would toll the 1 year and a day deadline. That legislation was supported by the ACLU, the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association, and the Fraternal Order of Police, which is rare to have all three organizations on the same page, because the belief is that if that 1 year and 1 day deadline passes, the officer cannot be disciplined for the alleged violation that occurred in the complaint. And if the criminal case is still ongoing, there's a very high likelihood that the evidentiary file that the ACC reviews will be less complete than if they waited until the end of the criminal case to submit the file. And again, both the House and Senate bills last year were passed unanimously in their chambers. Neither chamber passed the other chamber's bill, so there was no change to the law. And anyone who's familiar with Annapolis knows that when it gets down to that last day, occasionally that occurs where legislation that is very popular, there's no complaints about it, ultimately does not pass because of just the limited deadlines they have to get legislation across the end goal. So the proposed solution would be to have, again, to encourage the House and the Senate to pass that legislation or something very similar that would have the year-to-day deadline begin once the criminal case ends, whether the charges are ultimately dropped, whether the case is adjudicated, then the year-to-day deadline begins and allows the ACC to review the full investigatory file instead of going off of a skeleton file. The second issue is a recommendation is one that the Maryland Attorney General's office has opined on, which is that there is no language in the statute that deals with a scenario where a member of the public withdraws a complaint after making it. The law is silent to it, essentially. The AG's office has said it should be treated as if the complaint continues, because for a number of reasons, there's a concern that if a member of the public were to have a valid complaint and choose they don't want to be a part of it, they want to drop it, and the investigation is dropped. But it's not in the statute that it continues. The AG's office says treat it as if it should continue. But they also recommended that this be patched by the law so that, again, if an officer is accused of wrongdoing, once that accusation is made, it goes through the process of being investigated and going to the Administrative Charging Committee for adjudication.
Which our agencies do, correct?
Yes. Yes.
I'm gonna clarify.
But you want to make sure there's consistency across the board for all counties in Maryland, and also that 20, 30 years from now, that it not be something where it changes based on whatever a chief or an internal affairs team decides. The third recommendation here is to remove departmental accident cases from the jurisdiction of the Administrative Charging Committee. And there's really two reasons that the drafting committee flagged for this. The first is that they are very often cases where it's not really a matter of misconduct. If, for instance, an officer is responding to a call, has lights and sirens on, and let's say they're in pursuit of a vehicle and their mirror hits the mirror of a parked car, that could be construed as misconduct under the law as it currently stands, but it's not a scenario where the officer, it's not really comparable to a member of the public accusing an officer of a use of force violation or rude and discourteous conduct or violating something that is really impacting them. And there are other means by which the ACC doesn't handle, again, a claim by in that scenario, the person whose car is parked and their mirror gets hit. That's handled judicially. This wouldn't have any impact on that. And they can already have training without discipline, but any circumstance where there's misconduct or there is a potential policy violation with the driver of the vehicle, the officer driving the vehicle, it will go to the ACC. And it is something where also the ACC members are not necessarily policy experts on the driving process of officers, and it's not as clear to them as, for instance, a interaction between an officer and the public and on the street. Don, I don't know if you want to speak more to this from the ACC perspective. Do you would like to add anything to that? Okay.
Thank you. You're doing a good job.
Thanks. I know it's a lot. The fourth one is one that comes internally from myself. Require the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission to adopt an annual schedule for trainings. This is personally, I see this as being a major issue down the road if it's not addressed now. As it stands, every ACC member must attend a 40-hour in-person training program at the commission located in Sykesville, Maryland. Every ACC member, before they sit on a single meeting, must complete that training. Every trial board member, the judge and the civilian, must attend 2 days of in-person training in Sykesville. As it currently stands, there is not a schedule that is publicly or widely distributed or publicly available as to when future trainings will occur. And they occur on an as-needed basis. The concern is that that runs at odds with other parts of the statute, which namely, that the ACC has to meet every single month to review cases. And they have that year-and-a-day deadline to adjudicate something. If a jurisdiction has multiple members step down from the ACC for whatever reason, and they can't reach a quorum, they can't hear those cases. And if the trainings are not regularly scheduled, it could create a scenario where the ACC cannot issue a decision, and therefore no discipline can be issued if there's no training for new members to come on board. So again, a regular schedule is, I think, necessary to ensure a continuity and just to also make sure that these boards can do their work. Same with trial boards. They have to have members trained, and there should be regular training so that judges and civilians are able to sit on the boards. They can't sit on the boards unless they've received training. And again, to make that training more regular, there has been, again, the governor's office promoted a form that also addressed some other potential changes to the training, but those were more open-ended as to maybe it should be have more digital components or more components where people can do it remotely. But I think that there's not uniformity on whether or not that should be the case. And I think that Don can again speak to this, but there's a benefit to being in person and getting familiar with working in an in-person setting to learn the statute, learn the policy, and go through the process. So that is again, the draft November report. I'll be working with Don and BC Stat to incorporate the data from the November meeting, make sure that it's in there, and to, again, make sure that visually, when it's printed in particular, that it's easily viewable and not blurry.
I just have a couple things.
Sure.
Page 8 for the ACC meetings, just add 2 blank lines so we can drop in November and December's meetings.
Yep. Add those.
Page, well, this doesn't have a 12 and 13. At the very last one listed on each page, it should be violating a no contact order, not conduct order. And I would suggest they expand the label to read the full text.
Yep.
Because it's not.
We're going to be doing that.
Yeah.
Do that.
That's my only stuff. That's my only suggestions.
And any questions from the public, again, we can just save that to the public comment section. And then anything else from board members? And again, if there's anything that you have that you think of after reading this over, please share that with myself and the drafting committee, and we'll do another meeting before the next one to incorporate any potential changes and edits and review a final version, which will be posted and available ahead of the December meeting as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. You work hard.
Yes.
Is another hand?
Nigeria's hand.
What did I miss?
Nigeria's hands up.
Nigeria?
Hi, just trying to find out when you guys would like our edits in as far as the draft goes.
I think given the timeline where our next PAB meeting is the 16th, I think if they're in by December 9th, they can be incorporated.
Okay, thank you.
Henry, can you just clarify for me the distinction between page 12 and page 13?
Sure.
The 2 bar charts.
So page 12. Yep. And so page 12 includes every case heard by the ACC. Page 13 isolates it to those that don't fall into the departmental accident or use of force policy area. So for instance, page 12 includes departmental car accidents and use of force as 2 of the top 3. And then on page 13, it's just the rude, discourteous conduct, racial discrimination. It's just the ones that don't have any use of force component or departmental car accident component.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Anybody else? Okay. No other questions? Thank you again, Henry. We appreciate your hard work. Thank you so very much.
I want to thank you to the drafting committee for giving the guidance.
Okay, okay, let's keep moving forward here. I think the next thing on our agenda today is a review and recap of the ACC proceedings from,
I'll give my totals and I will have my full breakdown of the quarterly report in January.
thank you, Don.
So the ACC met on October 18th. We rendered 36 opinions. Of those 36, 3 were use of force. We also met on November 15th. We rendered 28 opinions. Of those 28, 4 were use of force, and we have 2 tabled for the next meeting because we requested more information from Internal Affairs.
Awesome. Anything else?
Nope.
That it? Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate that. All righty, information on coming fall boards.
Sure, that's me. So there are a couple trial boards coming up that just to be aware of. November 25th, 26th, there is a departmental accident trial board. December 2nd, a body worn camera violation trial board. December 17th, a necessary use of force, rude, discourteous conduct, and conduct of becoming a police officer trial board. And on January 7th, a failure to take necessary action on a call of a mental disorder trial board. So, and there will, again, these are rolling, they will come out of each of the ACC cases. And just to give folks an update on where we are with those. But those are fully moving forward and being regularly scheduled.
And those are posted on the website.
Yeah, BCPD handles yes, that is the statute delegates the processes to the department to implement.
Awesome. Thank you again. All righty, we're moving right along.
No other old business, I think.
No business, any business that anybody can think of? I think we pretty much close things as we go. Anybody? If not, let's go move forward to public comment. We've got a number of people with us today. Welcome, all of you. I saw Ms. Riska's hand earlier. Please.
Yes, thank you.
And for all members of the public, if you just,
There's.
Yeah, you get- oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Even-
I'm gonna go.
There we go. We're getting there.
So, if somebody can verify that I'm being heard.
Nigeria, Scott, can you hear?
We hear
I can hear you.
Okay, great.
We can hear.
Yes.
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, and thank you all for bringing your concerns to PAB and thus to the public. Since, as you made clear, Bishop, it's not the PAB members who really have an impact on police conduct.
Correct.
How best to get these messages to the people that do, the ACC and the trial boards? That's one question. And since I'm limited in time, I'll ask my second question. In the town hall, which Scott Henry attended, we talked about the fact that it was a surprise to many of us that even though there's a link to file a complaint against the police on the PAB website, that it's never seen by the members of PAB. And I've checked that link again, and it's still not clear that this is not going through the PAB in the sense of review and passing. So I think at minimum, the public should be made aware. It says that required to send it to them. That's not really telling people that it's the PAB members are not going to see this. With regard to my first question, should it be something that is recommended for legislation that this kind of presentation by communities be part of the ACC training? child watching on how best can people who are involved with the real data and the details. Get the same kind of.
Sure, yeah, I think this is part of the, just the statistically why Dawn it's on the ACC and PAB and does work back to the ACC members to go over what we discussed here and reports here, the outcomes. And then on the second point, I can certainly look at providing clarifying language. So it's no one believes no one's misinformed about how the complaint process plays out.
Thanks, Mr. Richards. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Yes, Carolyn. Introduce yourself.
Hi,
Forgive me for not recognizing you.
that's okay. First time here. My name's Claire Landers. I live in District 2. And I attended the public town meeting at Towson. And I actually was the person who asked the question, what do PAB members see about the complaints that come in? And frankly, I was stunned, and it's why I'm here today to learn that you all may see a complaint was filed, but have no idea what happened. No idea what a citizen was experienced and was so moved to report a complaint because for that person, it was unacceptable. And when I was, again, a little stunned to see the PAB is a body to which the public can submit a complaint and review the complaints. But it seems like no one is participating in this body is reviewing the complaints. If there is a question of confidentiality, I know in legal documents, when things are made public, they put a black bar over names or, house numbers. You all could be seeing appropriately redacted documents explaining what this citizen has come forth to say has happened before it goes into a completely opaque, separate from a public process within internal affairs, the ACC, trial boards, to which the public, I think by legal mandate, is not able to have any access to. But this body was established as a police accountability board to the public. And you are the link between the average county resident and everything that happens in the dark. And I just urge you to think about advocating that you as a body start to ask and be able to review the complaints that are coming in, at least within your own district, and to examine what is happening in other PABs across the state. Whether it's Prince George's County, whether it's Montgomery County, whether it's Howard County, other places. And see. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. I'll take. All right, anybody else? Yes, would you introduce yourself, please?
And if you want to,
Thank you.
one of us can.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. I can hold it for you. You are? Sure.
Thank you. I'm Cindy Farquhar, and I thank the PAB obviously for meeting as you do. And I thank the guests that are here. I'm rising in confusion because I didn't understand if the visitors who are here leave, is there any point in holding questions till the end? Because they wouldn't be here to answer them. So that was one thing. I went to a public meeting of the legal firm for the consent order, the Baltimore consent order. And what I found out there was that they have a sheet of paper talking about what people can do to complain about police conduct. And it didn't include the Police Accountability Board. So of course I spoke with them about that. I don't just come here. Of course I spoke with them about that, and their reasoning was they needed to use up the literature they had before they printed anymore. So
The city, correct, for the city consent decree.
yeah, this for the city consent decree. That's fine. That's fine. And a good point that you're making here. But I just thought that was outstanding. Now, another thing was this report that you're going to put in, and it'll be voted on next time. So next time won't be really a time for discussion. So I've been at board meetings, and I know that you don't necessarily give out things to the public here, but it made me feel very helpless. I couldn't possibly understand what was up on the screen. I certainly couldn't see it. There was nothing for me to look at. Thank you. And that's very nice. I didn't understand that I could ask for, that I could ask for it. And so I appreciate that.
And it will be uploaded to the website as well.
Yeah, I know that, but listening to you go through it would have been great with it in my hand. And then I guess I'm still waiting to see, will there be any recommendations to the actual police force in reference to policies or trends in practice? So I may have to wait until next December for that, but I'll be sorry about that. And I think that was it. I think that was it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
I just wanted to, I agree with you. It would have been nice to have the document ahead of time to review it. And it is small, even with it in hand. I can,
See that?
yeah, it's very small. But I do appreciate the effort in it. I love seeing statistics. I love seeing numbers and so forth to document what is put in the narrative. But I'm looking at the racial discrimination that's on paper. On page, I don't see the.
It's 12 and 13.
Okay, and it says racial discrimination that none of the officers were charged. I found that very hard to believe. None was charged. So to me, doing statistics, I mean, was the numbers screwed? Was the numbers out of all of them, nobody was charged with being discriminated? And we know where we live at. You know, I just find that very hard to believe that nobody was racially discriminated. And that's all I really have to say with that piece.
Well taken. Dawn, as you know, is our representative from the PAB board. And of course, she'd like to have this feedback on that, or just,
The numbers are accurate to our outcomes.
yeah. Yes.
Right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
What does that mean?
It means no officers were charged with racial discrimination during this reporting period.
Right, that means that they weren't charged, but does it truly mean that it was no discrimination? It depends on the person's perception, but were they truly discriminated against?
I mean, they weren't charged, and I couldn't
They
even
weren't
like
charged, but they
recall
could
the
truly have
specific
been
cases right now, so
Yeah,
if it rose to the level of racial discrimination, they would be charged.
right, I understand what the data says, but.
No, I'm not with the data, so if we
Right.
get a case and there's racial discrimination, they would be charged.
Well,
So the ones we have reviewed, there have been no evidence of
Yeah,
racial
I think it's
discrimination to
clear
charge them.
I just find it hard
They
to
use
believe
the
that zero.
rubric. Based upon the rubric they use in the ACC, it did not prove that there was discrimination.
So there's no rubric for racial discrimination, it's evidence. So
Well,
if there is 0% evidence, they won't be
There's no,
charged.
right, there's
Yeah.
no, how do you determine that?
5 people review it independently and come with their thoughts.
And that's not acceptable, you know?
I've-
And which
That's
five
the way,
and what's their background, and I have plenty of questions, because when I see no. That's
no
just,
charges.
yeah,
no, I understand.
yeah.
Yeah, and And I mean, I would say, I mean, because we don't know the specifics of it, so we
Right.
can't, you know. But I guess the question is, you know, are there any things that can be gleaned from those cases to work on? Because,
If there are, they are reported in our opinion. We
okay,
aren't silent to things like that.
okay.
For that reason, we actually, I feel like we expand our opinions further than initially planned for that reason, to give important feedback to the member of the public and to the agency officer.
Are your opinions available to the public?
They are in a redacted version. With
They're gonna be.
information afterwards. Yeah.
Yes, they're, yes, if they have gone through the process, so not if they're pending a trial board, for instance, but if the trial board is, or if the trial board has ended and the officer requests a circuit court appeal, they would still be in the process, and the statute says essentially that everything's confidential until it's finally resolved.
So, for example, in the case that one of the cases that I cited, which involved the Walbrook police station, young man was assaulted.
Oh,
in our-
Woodlawn.
Woodlawn, I'm sorry, I said Walbrook, my apologies. In the Woodlawn Police Station, that officer was charged with offensive swearing. He was not charged with any physical conduct or misconduct. Now, I saw the videotape of that. So that is a case that I would like, in all possibilities, to file a MPIA request on, so that I can see what the ACC reasoned in negating what I saw with my own eyes. So would I file that request with the ACC?
We are, yes, Kelly is our secretary is a custodian of records administrative charge. I mean, I can't speak to any
I didn't ask.
specific cases.
I didn't ask.
But any document request that would be, we keep a record of all documents.
All right, I'll talk to you before the, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And Serena, in the chat stated, you are.
Absolutely, just because they did not see that it's guilty does not mean that community members did not experience it. I think that was in reaction to Dr. Tolson's point about the discrimination.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Awesome. Did every member of the public who wanted to comment have a chance to do so? We good? All right. Thank you so very much again.
Lorena, real quick, just me.
Sure, please jump right on.
Did you have a comment, Lorena?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. You might hear my dog in the background. I apologize for that. We are still working remotely. I really appreciate the people that presented today. I just want to reiterate what Roland Patterson said around the escalation piece, right? It's really important to look at patterns of police officers. It does not start with a shooting. It does not start with excessive force. It starts with stops, right? Like frisk and stops. That is something that there's tons of data on. And it is really imperative that there is some storytelling, there is some story captures of people who are reporting incidents, right? These are our communities. These are our neighbors, our loved ones, people that we run into in grocery stores or anywhere, right? And so it's important that we are respectful of when they are filing a complaint, that there's some, like, their stories are being captured. And I can definitely present some resources of what Baltimore City has done to capture those stories, or other police accountability boards throughout the state. Going back to the point that Roland made that I want to emphasize is looking at patterns, right? It is like verbal aggression or not, or like stop, like the stops, the frequent stops, the ticketing. These are things, if you look at the patterns and you focus on these patterns, they will show you that this is how situations escalate, and this is how we get into police brutality through, like shootings or excessive force. So I just urge the police accountability boards to really focus on the trends and the patterns that are happening in the police department. Though my view is that it is systemic. The issues are systemic. We're not discussing good cops, bad cops. We're talking about a system. And that is why there needs to be checks and balances. And that is why these police accountability boards must exist. in order for there to be transparency in what is happening in the police department and in order for there to be accountability. And I'm not sure who the person was that spoke about or was asking questions around the discrimination piece and saying like, well, just because they weren't charged doesn't mean it didn't happen. I completely agree with you. I don't know who that was, and I apologize for missing your name, but I also want to emphasize that point because there are rubrics and it is about how people are viewing something, right? And how do you determine what a racial discrimination situation looks like, right? Just because they were not charged, that does not mean that that individual did not experience that. I know that the police accountability boards have only been in place for a couple of years, so we're still learning, we're still growing, but I urge that we look into patterns and that we look into how we can improve accountability within the departments because this is very much systemic and it's going to take us working together, collaborating in order for us to continue to improve these systems and that communities feel safe when they are interacting with police officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorena. Thank you so much. The person that was speaking was Dr. Danita Tolson, just for your records, all right? Okay, any other thoughts, questions, commentary? If not, we're going about to the point where we're going to adjourn until our next meeting. Yes,
Could I
please,
say
jump
something?
in.
I just want to make another comment, that there is folk who do not trust the police department.
Sure.
Okay. And then, we have to try to keep that in the front of our minds. So when we see, racial discrimination, 17 cases, but none charged, and that could be the case, right? And it's nothing wrong with that. But I think some people will think, okay, here we go again.
Yeah.
Discrimination just isn't important because it's not us or whatever. And so we have to, whatever information or steps we can go farther to give that information or to talk about that information. Appreciate what you said on the actual opinions, because it's really about people feeling a certain way. And if it's something there, how we try to address it internally with the police department. So transparency is just very important when we come to these different things because of the trust level that people do not have. And these are different things that we have to continue together to work on, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Sure.
And Peter Richkus speaking to Mr. Coleman's point. The other thing that statistic says is to the police, there's no problem. And that's a problem because people's behavior towards one another is partially informed by their impression. Perception is reality. So if these statistics say to our police department, there is no problem, then they don't have anything to work on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'd just like to mention that they are no longer just statistics if you have read the complaint. Now, not all of those people perhaps have filed a complaint that came through the PAB. But if it did, and it came to you, you would have read what had happened. And it wouldn't just be, well, somebody is discussing privately what happened. You would have the story in front of you to make your judgment. Did our system work in evaluating this? Because from what I'm reading, I'm not sure it did. And maybe we need to relook at the system of deciding these or criteria. So again, I urge you, try to get access to the complaints that are filed to your PAB for the sake of transparency. That's what people are assuming is happening.
And I would want serving on both boards, I think it would be prejudicial to only provide the complaint from member of the public and not all of the other information that the police department provides when it's reviewed and decided upon. So we could have the complaint, which could paint one very clear picture, and then all of the information that comes in changes that picture.
And that is part of the system.
But I think that then goes into the PAB is doing the same thing the ACC is.
Not just by reading the complaint. It does not give the PAB any powers to adjudicate.
But they're also
you
missing
are
a lot of important information.
And in whatever way a citizen can file an MPIA request or FOIA to, if you felt compelled to do so, you could do it. But otherwise, no one knows. No one knows to even question if they haven't seen the person's story, because you're not getting any part of the story right now. You're getting statistics. That's just not what people thought when they urged the state of Maryland to pass a law, putting in place a police accountability board made up of citizens. That's the ACC is different. The trial boards are different. This was supposed to be a balance to understand what people were experiencing that would then be handled through another process to give people a window to what their police are accused of doing. We shouldn't have to wait till it makes the newspapers because it was a deadly use of force. I mean, Baltimore County had the worst record in deadly use of force in the entire state for several years running. And then we got the police accountability boards and the ACCs. So progress, we need to just keep working on better because it's still not perfect. It never will be perfect, but let's be better.
Point well taken. Thank you.
May I just say that once a month, we have the time to have these discussions. And again, can't adjudicate it here, but you have the time to have these discussions if you have it.
We can perhaps influence those kinds of things and we can't change necessarily, but you're right. Points well taken. I share with that. Thank you so much. That's well taken. We hear it clearly. Hear it clearly.
I have a question and a comment, if I may.
Sure.
The PAB reviews the decisions of the ACC, is that right? No.
Only 3 people, but after the ACC, 3 people see the opinion. The complainant, the member of the public, the police officer being accused, and the chief of police.
It doesn't PAB.
We do what we're doing here today. What the ACC has done. We make recommendations. We feel like there needs to be change in some of those areas, but it's all limited.
Not
About influence. So, that again?
Are not reviewing their
Well,
decisions.
we're not reviewing it for change. We're just looking at results they
Decision review their
decision.
results. Okay.
In the aggregate, it's clear. So for instance, the data that's in the report.
Yeah.
Each quarter, there's a report by Dawn as to, for instance, there were X number of cases of sports allegations. Of those, X number of officers charged or not charged.
Are your meetings both?
The initial part is our review of files and the opinions are.
Well, I'd like to direct my final comment to you all, but then emphatically to you, Dawn.
Right.
All right. You are in the spirit of Claire Landers back there, elected or appointed as change agents because there were cases of excessive force that were found valid, that the legislature found to be unacceptable. And it did in both in our state and in our nation. We all know George Floyd, but there were also, the young kid out on the Eastern Shore, I don't remember his name, and they called the law after him.
Yes.
Antoine.
The Antoine's Law, et cetera. So we have it in our state also. So as change agents, change goes against the grain. And in some instances, and in many measures, your jobs as change agents are unpleasant by design. They are unpleasant by design. And I believe and urge upon you that your disposition ought to be willing to bear that unpleasantry because it may bring justice. And that's just that. That's just that. So I pray actually, that I don't know whether the ACC and the PAB take oaths, but if you don't, you should take a moral oath, that you will be true to the cause of this mission because it's a delegation from the legislature. It's not a toy or anything not serious. So thank you very, very much for considering my concerns here today, all of you.
It's heard clearly. Can assure you it's heard clearly. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So the question, what does the PAB do? In your own org chart, it says the PAB is to review complaints. That was one sentence about what this body is to do. We're reviewing numbers, not complaints.
Thank you. I appreciate all the feedback and certainly we will take it all into consideration as well.
Good.
You good? All right. Anyone else? Virtual members? All right. Yes, yes.
Can we influence the agenda for next meeting?
Can you influence the agenda for
The
next
people
week?
that spoke here today, in other words, to put on there, how can the Police Accountability Board look at actual complaints? Can we influence that agenda?
Any member of the public and
Why not?
any member of the board, put this way, can make any request for an agenda item. So.
All right, then I have a request that some member of the board make a request that it be on the agenda that
Make
on
a
December
motion
16th.
to add to new business the next meeting for members of the public to make recommendations on what we can do to improve our process and work.
Sure.
Yeah. So she just.
Thank you very much, but could it be specifically, can the Police Accountability Board review actual stories, the actual complaints from people?
So
Could
just-
could it be that?
I think that would be a process change.
It is, so we did, yes, we did, this was discussed again back in 2023 and in 2022, and the position of the, based on a review of the Office of Law's position was that the complaints themselves are covered under the statute by the confidentiality provisions that apply to the Administrative Charging Committee, so that they can't be, that the statute states that the Police Accountability Board receive and transmit, but it doesn't get into discussion about whether or not they review and see them. So there's kind of a gray area in the position, but the Office of Law was that, was stated at a prior meeting was that it's not
Can
for,
my delegate and my state senator influence the Office of the Law?
it would have to be clarifying language of the statute to make it clear that.
And can they ask for that if I ask them to ask?
I can't speak to the members in Annapolis as to, well, I can't speak for the members in Annapolis as to what they would be, but that I think would be a conversation with them.
I'm not asking. them.
Bring be like
So
on
I
a-
will ask them, can they talk with the Office of the Law? I'm sorry, did I miss? Can they speak with the Office of the Law?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. My request was that my state delegate or state senator be allowed to speak with the Office of the Law on this gray area. You just said it's a gray area.
I'm not sure what the Office of Law's review on that would be, whether or not they would be able to have those conversations. I don't know. I'm not an Office of Law member. so
And yet you are a lawyer and the manager of this group. Could you get back to me on that
I can talk to the Office of Law about
and get back to me?
it. The next meeting I can follow up with you about it.
Do we
Not
want to
before
have
that?
somebody from Office of Law here at the next
I was
meeting
gonna
to explain
suggest
better?
that,
Yeah.
We can have someone from the Office of Law here. Not that I don't want to attend, so.
Just to clarify, Henry is not our attorney.
No,
He is
correct.
an attorney by
That's
trade,
correct.
by training, by education. He is not our attorney.
I
He does
can't
not give us
provide
any legal advice at all.
Or advice on any interpretation of
Correct.
the OOL.
But he is a lawyer and the manager of this group, so.
But he could also be working at McDonald's part-time and that would have nothing to do with what he's doing here. He is an attorney by trade, but not our attorney.
Okay, great. So bring Hayward.
I'll make a motion to request the Office of Law be present at our next meeting to address review of files or not, or complaints.
I second that.
We've had a very wholesome meeting today. Thank you.
Yeah.
We sure appreciate it. Next, we're going to adjourn, right? We're up to the point of adjournment.
Good.
Miss
Next
Williams,
meeting is-
actually, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Did I miss somebody?
Well, Miss Williams put in the, Karen put in the chat. She agrees with the excellent point that the process of how the results are gained. I agree, they should be reviewed.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Wait a minute, and she also said these have been some very valid points raised.
Meaning it's good meeting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's our District 2 representative.
Thank you so very much. All righty, our next meeting will be December the 16th. 12 noon right here in room 118 here at the Towson Historic Courthouse. So you're welcome to come back with us again. So let's see if we can make some progress.
Motion to adjourn until December 16th at noon, where we'll meet here or via WebEx.
Right?
Second.
Can I get a second for the adjournment read? Righty.
All right.
Thank you so very
Thank you,
much.
everybody.
And again, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.